adopted. And unfortunately, in the cases of some animals, that might be up to 2 years before they find a home. And it can lead to us, be having a lot of pressure to take animals when we don't really have space. So it's a huge issue for us. So Poppy and Frankie, who are on the left, Poppy you'd see around the place because Lee, the organiser of the festival, that's her dog. So she came to us from a puppy mill. The people had 400 dogs on their property and they were licensed to have, I think, 300 for breeding. And yeah, there were a huge number of dogs that came through the shelter. And Frankie, who's next to her, is a border collie. They both came through that shelter, and so they came to foster with us. They were lucky. The dog on the right, this isn't one of our dogs. Dog 109 is basically a big tumbleweed of fur, matted fur. It had been bred from numerous times in a puppy mill. But even in backyards, this can still happen, even with a breeder number. So it's a huge problem. And I don't think people realise that even when you buy a dog from someone on Gumtree, that they may have come from a situation that wasn't fantastic. What I thought dog rescue would be like was basically sitting around with wonderful dogs frolicking around me. I had this image probably from when I was a kid. We had dogs when I was little, and I always liked the idea of doing dog rescue when I was little, and I had a very fanciful idea of what it would be like. And the truth is that a lot of it is, and I don't know if you can see these, it's basically wiping your tears away with money because it takes a lot of money to do dog rescue, whether that is for surgeries, just for general vet work like desexing, vaccinations, etc. And it's a lot of poop scooping. So we have a lot of people wanting to volunteer with the shelter, and they think they're going to come and walk dogs and play with them, and it's going to be wonderful. And like there's a television show out at the moment which is all about people going to adopt dogs. It's got this great little setup. It's very beautiful, and I'm just like, it's not really like that at all. It's quite filthy, and you smell from head to toe. It's not pretty. So I think a lot of people come to volunteer, they have that experience, and they're like, oh, that's not really what I want to do, and then they don't come back. So having that image is kind of a little bit false. So why do dogs come to the shelter? There's a lot of different reasons why that might happen. Whether that's housing, changed circumstances. So housing is a huge problem. So people who have a house, they need to sell for whatever reason. They can't find a place after that to rent that allows pets. Is a huge problem for us. Or if they were renting somewhere, they lose their property and then they can't find another property where they can keep their pets. And I know that a lot of people would say, I would never give up my pet. But it's really, really hard to find a place that allows pets these days. And so that's something that can really needs to be addressed. Domestic violence is a big issue. We have some dogs that come to us from relationship breakups, and for good reason, because one of the parents of the dog cannot look after the animal anymore because they can't find somewhere to rent that can have a pet. So that's a huge issue. So there's a fundraiser at the information booth for T-shirts for Safe Pets, Safe Families SA, which do a lot of work in trying to find places for animals while people try and sort their independent circumstances out at short term. So that's a really good organisation to support. Death or illness, super common. We have a lot of the dogs that I've fostered, they tend to be older. They often need surgeries. They come from places where someone has passed on or needs to move into a nursing home, and there's no one in the family or the friendship group that's willing to take their animal on. The two dogs on the left, Cassie and Flynn, and then Bronnie in the middle, they were housed together from a supporter of the shelter. And when their human mum passed away suddenly, the three of them, the shelter takes back animals as much as it can to try and help them to find another home if they need to. So the three of them came to foster with me. And I was lucky with Flynn because he was a beagle. I work with a couple of other rescue groups for certain breeds, and it's quite easy to find homes for certain breeds because there's obviously people who are looking for them out there. And it's a good way to rehome, particularly older dogs, because they have health issues. And if you have that breed, you have a bit more of an understanding of that. Whereas other people, like the look of a dog, don't really understand that it might have certain quirks that they need to deal with. So Cassie has just come back to us again. So she lost her home through domestic violence issues. So she's actually gone on to another home since then. So it can happen more than once that the dog will come back to us and we need to find them a new home. And then on my far right-hand side, Bo, he came to us recently when a lady, she had 3 dogs and she had to move into a housing unit as part of a retirement village, and she was allowed to have 2 dogs but not 3. And so she had to make this awful decision as to which dog would have to go to a new home. So really, luckily, we found a home for Bo really quickly. So he passed through my hands pretty quickly to someone I knew who was looking for another small dog companion to their dog. So he found a home really quickly. So that was really lucky. Why else did they come to the shelter? Poor pet choice is a big one, and poor expectations of what that dog is going to be like. So sometimes it's a spontaneous purchase or gift. So people aren't really thinking about the longer term impact of having a pet. Lots of people adopted and bought animals during COVID. And so we're starting to see those animals come back to shelters now that people are returning to work, because they're not staying home all the time, and their dogs have a bit of separation anxiety because they're accustomed to people being around all the time. So you can't do that to an animal. You have to be realistic about the fact that your departure is going to have an impact on them, and you need to have some structure around that so that they can become used to having time on their own and knowing securely that you'll come back. People are sold on image. Every time there's a movie like 101 Dalmatians, they are amazing dogs, but they're not for everyone. But they're sold in huge numbers, and then some people find that they're not the right dog for them and they're not prepared for some of the issues. No consideration of lifestyle, huge one. But a lot of people like active dogs, don't have active lifestyles, aren't prepared for the exercise. And so you'll find that dogs get bored, they get destructive, and people aren't willing to work with their animal and recognise that they have a role in that as well. No commitment to training. Oh my gosh, I should have put this in like huge letters. We have so many people come to the shelter and want a fully trained animal. And often the dogs will come to the shelter and they've had no training at all from their parents. They don't know how to toilet outside. They need to be taught that. They don't know how to, sit or stay or how to behave around food. So the expectation that somehow dogs are going to pick this up without any kind of consistent training is just insane. It's really important for both you and your dog that you do some schooling, because the more that your dog knows what you want from them, the better relationship the two of you will have with each other. It will be easier for them because they know where the boundaries are and they'll know what you want from them. And lack of exercise, that leads to destruction. So lots of people complain that dogs chewing up shoes or, clothes or whatever, but they don't change their behaviours and they don't train a dog or entertain them or exercise them enough to get them past that. So a couple of dogs here. This is, you can't really see it, but Matilda, there's a photo, the only photo I could get of her was basically of her chest because she just wouldn't stop bouncing because she was just so full of energy and untrained. The dog at the top, Boise, he is a Cocker Spaniel. Everyone loved him. We had millions of calls for him because he looks pretty. He's a nice breed. He had major anxiety. He ate curtains and he would dig under fences and really force his way out of properties. And so people would be like, oh, I really like this dog. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. And it's really not like that. You have to be willing to work with dogs that have those sorts of issues. So he took quite a few, we have to disappoint people sometimes because they don't realize, people don't realize that you need to, have some realistic expectations of this dog is coming from a shelter. It may not have had a lot of training before, and you need to actually invest in that dog to make sure that they're going to be comfortable. Veterinary expenses, free pets are not free. We have people messaging us who sometimes are upset that we won't offer dogs at a cheaper price. I mean, our dogs are reasonably cheap compared to other rescues. But if we give someone a dog for nothing, then I understand that finances are tight and you can't always afford a pet, but then you can't always afford their vet bills either. So down in the bottom here, we have Tyson, who's on the bottom left. He was a 10-year-old boxer who came to us. He had a cancerous growth and he'd been left because whoever owned him, they couldn't afford to perform surgery on him or to look after him. So we did all of that. And he went off to live with another elderly boxer, and they were very cute. They were like two elderly, kind of wizened little old men, like bookends, very cute. Reggie, second from the left, she came to us with a really old cruciate ligament injury. So she was running around okay, and then suddenly she started running on 3 legs because her old injury sort of started flaring up. So she needed surgery. That was $800 later. Gringo, who's next, that's my dog. He also had the same surgery because he's bigger. He was $5,000. So if you don't have pet insurance, I mean, that comes out of nowhere. He was 3 years old. So you don't expect that to happen in a young dog. So you need to be prepared for that stuff. And then Tyler on the right, I mean, he's been bitten. He's a greyhound. He's been bitten twice, and he's needed surgery to sew up his wounds. Like, that was $1,000 ago. So, you know, pets aren't cheap. And if you can't afford to adopt a dog, then you maybe need to look at a different kind of animal that you can reasonably afford the vet care for. It's just a reality of that circumstance. So where does fostering fit? This is a picture of my mum sitting on the couch with Gringo on the left, my dog, and Tyler on the right, who's also mine. And in the middle is Maxie. He was 14 when he came to us when his mum suddenly died and he had nowhere to go. So we have a lot of elderly dogs come through my place. We have convalescent dogs, so ones that have had surgery and they need time to recover. A shelter's not a great place for them to be. And we do have some dogs some dogs are okay at a shelter. You know, they're just like, okay, I'm here. I'll be all right. Things will be fine. And then you have other dogs that really miss being around people and they really need that, you know, that interaction. And those are the kinds of dogs that come to stay with us rather than stay in the shelter. It just seems to suit them better. And it also gives us a chance to do some training with them as well, so that when they do get adopted, they're a little bit more predictable for the people that they're going to. We know a lot more about the dogs when they come through foster as well, because you can spend time with them. But it can be expensive to foster. For me, if I foster a dog, I just decide to take on the financial responsibility of that animal, because otherwise it's just creating more costs for the shelter. Not everyone can do that though. So there are other organisations that will provide a lot of support around that, like Greyhounds as Pets. They do a lot of financial support for people that foster dogs for them. So that's different for different organisations, and it can be stressful. And fostering can be for long periods of time. So on the left is a greyhound called Leroy. He was a mistake foster of mine, not really a mistake, but he was a big undertaking. So I brought him over from New South Wales from racing. He had ticks, so he needed to be treated for that. He took 6 months of training to recognise that other dogs were dogs and that he didn't need to react to them. So he was quite reactive to other dogs. He barked a lot, and people used to tell me that greyhounds don't bark at all. He was just like a baptism of fire for greyhound fostering. So 6 months on, and he was ready to go to a home. So if you don't have that time and that commitment to an animal, then fostering can be a difficult thing to commit to. And then Monty, who's on the right-hand side, he was a deaf blue heeler. He was profoundly deaf. And he was my first foster ever. And I felt sorry for him, which is why I fostered him. He came from Marook. And he was really difficult because I was prepared to work with a deaf dog, but I wasn't prepared to work with a deaf dog that barked constantly, that chased shadows. Like he had real quirks to him. And he took a long time to find a home. But when we found him a home, it was the right one. Like, it was on acreage. He had space, plenty of interaction with other animals. So it really suited him. But he was a lot of work. So you don't always know what you're getting sometimes. So what can I do if I'm a pet owner? Adopt, don't shop wherever you can. I mean, I think probably most people here recognise that that's a preferable way to do things. There's always a dog that will need a home, and same with cats as well. And there's often chickens and rabbits and other species too that will need homes. So it's always worth having a look around. Have an open mind on your pet choice. So just because you really want a dog might not be the right thing for you. If you live in an apartment or you're renting, etc., something else might be a better choice, or the cost, etc. Commit to training and consistency, even if it's sits, waiting for you to go outside if the doors are open, that kind of thing. It's really important so that the dog knows what you want from them and vice versa. And you need to accept that your pet is not going to be perfect and will take effort from you. And I think it's something that it will develop over time, and there will just become a point where you and your pet will suddenly become really comfortable with each other, and it will all, kind of gel together. The other thing you can do is to plan. So if you have a pet, have a plan for what you might need to do if you can't have that pet with you in future. So if you suddenly have to move because you're renting, or, you know, something happens to you and you're medically unwell, speak to people around you about who might be able to take over the care of your animal, even if it's temporary, so that this animal has somewhere to go to and it doesn't end up at risk of going to a shelter. Think about your parents' pets as well. We have a lot of people who can't take their parents' pets on because they already have a lot of pets of their own. And so those dogs end up coming to us, and they're all often quite elderly and they need a bit of vet work. So having conversations with parents is a really important thing. Yes, so have those conversations now. What else can you do? If you're a landlord, and obviously there will be a few people around in the audience that will be landlords, try to start to be receptive to pet owners. So maybe if you've had a tenant for a while and they've been great tenants and they're talking about wanting to adopt an animal of some kind, then it might be nice to have a discussion with them about what might be acceptable. Or ask for references from people that have had rental properties before with pets, and see whether, you know, this person is responsible and could potentially have a pet with them, because otherwise they're going to find it very difficult to find a place to live. So that's all really important. What can you do if you don't have a pet, or you do have pets and you can't take on any more? There's plenty of things that you can do. So ask about volunteering and be open to different ideas about what that volunteering might look like. So you might not be walking dogs and, you know, cuddling them, but you might be doing something else that's really important for the shelter. So, you know, whether that is helping out with a fundraiser, helping to share posts online. That's actually a really big thing for us. The more posts that get shared to groups that aren't within our, you know, usual circle, that's the way that our animals find new homes. Because if it's the same people sharing all the time, it's the same people that will see the same animals. So you're making that net a bit larger. That's a good thing to do. Donate small amounts of dollars. So set up a fortnightly donation with your pay. Like $5 can make a huge difference. I mean, we have 30,000 followers, and if everyone donated $1 every fortnight, we would have no vet bills ever. But it's never like that. We have to go through these fundraising spurts because we just don't have people consistently donating. So small amounts make a big difference. And one of the easiest things you can do for a small rescue, and there's lots of them out there, is $15 a month, and you can sponsor a dog to pay for their flea treatments and worming treatments. And that's one big cost that you can take off of a shelter really easily. Donate items, whether that's food, medicine. We often take a lot of bedding, so towels, sheets, doona covers, etc., because we use lots of those for bedding for the animals in the shelter. So it doesn't have to be a financial thing. Or hold a fundraiser or attend a fundraiser, and it could be like a games night, could be a morning tea. There's lots of different things that you can do. So, I mean, ultimately, when you boil it down, hands-on is great, but money is never a bad thing for any small rescue, because there's so many out there that just don't have the ability to advertise in the way that the big rescues do. And they really do genuinely appreciate every cent that comes from the people around them. And that's it. I've got time for questions if anyone would like to ask me anything. And I do have pluggables. We have fundraising calendars. Perfect Christmas presents filled with animals that have been adopted from the shelters. So any questions that anyone would like to ask? Yes. I personally rescue with Moorook Animal Shelter, but I do sometimes take greyhounds from other places as well. So, yeah. So Moorook Animal Shelter is located in the Riverland between Banrock Station Winery and Barmera. So it's a bit of a hike, but it's lovely up there. Any other questions that anyone might have? So, yeah.
How many people take them on as
So the question is, if you foster, how many people end up foster failing? Well, I foster failed once. We've got another volunteer twice. It does happen a bit. We have 3 dogs now. We had 4. I have 2 dogs and my partner has 2 dogs. So we're quite happy for dogs to come to us and pass through, and our dogs are also happy for that. It's actually quite nice. I didn't ever think there was a maximum number of dogs, but there really is. Trust me on that. So, I mean, the most we've ever had in our house at one time is 6, including like 2 fosters, but generally they've been quite short term. Like it's not going to be a long term thing. I know that with a lot of the greyhound adoption programs, a lot of them are fostered to adopt, and so the intention is that you're fostering, and if it works out, then maybe the dog might stay with you. But it depends on the organisation, and it depends how many pets you already have. Yes. People ask me how it is that I give them up. It's actually quite easy when you already have 3, and then you have chickens as well. Yeah. Any other questions that anyone might have? All right, then. Well, I'll wrap up. But yeah, if you good luck with your puppies if you do have them. If you need puppies, come see me, or cats. Heaps of cats. Always space for an extra cat. I know that, cat people. Yeah, but happy to have a chat afterwards if you'd like to ask me anything else.
All right, well, there you go. I was about to say give it a round of applause, but you already are. Thank you so much for that, Sarah. It was very insightful. Next up, we have some people from Seaspiracy coming, and that starts in half an hour. So maybe go get something to eat and come back. Thank you.